Hello and welcome to Tuesday's edition of Cracking the Cryptic, where today we have another trip to see the wizard. Now about 6 months ago on the channel we published a puzzle by Rishi Puri, the Indian constructor and brilliant solver, and it was an anti-consecutive or non-consecutive anti-night Sudoku. And it was the most elegant puzzle you can possibly imagine. It had sort of total symmetry in the grid. And that video currently has about 400,000 views. A very, very popular video, simply because of the beauty of the puzzle. And it must be, I suspect, one of the most viewed Sudokus of all time on that basis. And Rishi sent me a Facebook message yesterday saying he'd managed to construct another puzzle he thought we might like to take a look at. So obviously we have to listen. And what we've got on screen is something called a Kropki Sudoku. Now don't worry if you don't know the rules of Kropki Sudoku, I'm going to talk you through them in a minute. But I can tell you that this is a very unusual looking Kropki Sudoku in that there are no white dots at all in this grid. So we'll come back to that in a minute. What we should do first though, I should tell you about Mark's video later tonight, which is the fourth part of 4 in relation to Ashish Kumar's Linked Sudoku series. So tonight is the big reveal as to what's going on with those 4 puzzles. Do watch it. It's an incredible sequence of puzzles and very, very worthwhile, I think, if you've not been following it, to take a look. Now, I should tell you about this puzzle. Let's talk about it. So, Kropki Sudoku. Basically, it's normal Sudoku, except that some of the cells have white dots and some of the cells have black dots connecting them. What do these mean? Well, if the absolute difference between 2 cells is 1, then there must be a white dot connecting them. So imagine this square was a 4. This square cannot, in this puzzle, be a 3 or a 5, because if it was a 3 or a 5, there would have to be a little white dot connecting them. Normally, in a Kropki Sudoku, you have loads of given white dots, but as I say, in this one, we don't have that luxury. Now, if, on the other hand, one cell is half its neighbouring cells, so let's say this was a 6, then they would have to have a black dot between them. So in this instance, let's imagine this was a 6. This cell could not be a 3, because if it was a 3, there would have to be a little black dot connecting it to this one. Now, obviously, where there are black dots, you know, there are a variety of options for these cells. I mean, it could be 1, that could be 2, this could be 2, that could be 4, that could be 4, that could be then 2 or 8, that could be 3, that could be 6, that could be, you know, there's a whole host of stuff that can involve cells connected by black dots. But perhaps the thing it's worth remembering is that 5s, 7s and 9s can never be in cells that contain a black dot. And the reason obviously is if we put a 5 in there, that would imply this square is either 2.5 or 10, neither of which is possible. Same for 7, same for 9. So that's just something to bear in mind as you go through your solve. Now, do try this puzzle. How often is it you get to do a puzzle by a wizard? Not very often. And if you want to have a go, you click on the link under the video, and that will take you to this web page where you can play on whichever device takes your fancy. Oh, one thing I should mention about the rules. I'm not sure how important it is for this puzzle, but some of you will wonder. What about if you had a 1 in a cell and it was connected to a 2? Now, those of you who are paying attention will say, well, that could be connected by a black dot or a white dot. Well, you're quite right. And in that instance, the way the Kropki Sudoku normally works is that the compiler can choose whether it's connected by a black dot or a white dot, but there would have to be a black dot and a white dot connecting these 2 squares. Now, in this instance, Rishi hasn't chosen, or if he has chosen, he's chosen to connect them with a black dot in order to maintain this remarkable no givens, no white dots Kropki Sudoku. So with that, let's get cracking. I'm going to try and solve it. He did say this is a hard puzzle, by the way, so I'm not sure how hard, but we shall find out. Now, so where's my eyes are immediately drawn to the central box. So that's for 2 reasons. Firstly, I've got lots and lots of black connectivity here, and that means these squares are the only squares in this box that don't contain black dots, so they must contain a 5, 7 and a 9 somewhere within these 4 cells. And when you get a run of 3 black or 3 cells connected by black dots in a row, column or box, you always know, if you do a lot of Kropki Sudoku, you'll pick up on this, the middle one always has to be a 2 or a 4. You may be surprised by that, but it is true and we can prove it. Let's try what we can put in this one down here. This could be a 1, well that would be a 2 therefore, that would be a 4. That can't be an 8 now, because look, we continue the run along here. If this was an 8, this would have to be a 4 again, and we get repeated 4s in a row. So this would have to go downwards then, and then downwards again. Okay, now if this was a 2 on the other hand, this then would be a 4, this would have to be an 8, and then it would have to go down again, so 4 and 2. If this was a 4, this would be a 2, this would be a 1, this would be a 2, this would be a 4. So actually these 2 squares are always the same digit. And so are the... so actually I'm going to make a note of this. Those 2 are always the same, these 2 are always the same. Otherwise I'll forget that, and I've got no convenient way of notating that really. So we've done 4. Now what about if this is... oh, whoops. What about if this is an 8? If this is an 8... that would be a 4, that would be a 2. That would have to go up again, and this would be the 8, obviously. Okay. So, well, right, well that does give us something, because in this box now we've not yet thought about 3s and 6s. Now I can't put 3 and 6 along with 5, 7 and 9 into these 4 cells, because that would be trying to put 5 digits into 4 cells. So I know one of these 2 squares must be a 3 or a 6. Well, in that case, both of them must be. So this is a 3-6 pair. We've got a run of 3 again here. So again, we know the central one must be a 2-4. And the extremities must be 1, 2, 4 or 8. Another thing actually I've remembered about Kropki Sudoku is when you do have one of these runs of 3 in a box, you always know that there is a 2 and a 4 in the run. So we could actually notate that with 2 and 4 like this. And the same thing here, these 3 squares must contain a 2 and a 4. And we can prove that to ourselves just by going through the options again. 1, 2, 4, obviously 2, 4, 8, 4, 2, 1, 8, 4, 2. So there's always a 2 and a 4 no matter how we do this. So these 2 squares must be 3 and 6. Because if these 2 squares can't contain a 2 or a 4, I could try and put a 1 or an 8 into one of them, but the other square would therefore have to be a 2 or a 4. So you can see that that's just not possible anymore. The only option for these 2 squares is 3 and 6. Box 9 is interesting. Yes, box 9 is interesting. We've got all sorts going on down here. We've got our run of 3 again, so we can fill in some options here. These have got to contain 2 and 4. These 2 have got to be 3 and 6, exactly the same logic as this box up here. But this time we've got an extra black dot here, look, connecting this 3, 6 to something. So that's got to connect to another 3, 6. And we've got a run of we've got a run of 4 cells here connected by 3 black dots. But this is a bit more tricky, isn't it? Sort of Tetris shape we've got going on in the grid. So if this is 1, that would be 2. That can't go downwards then, because that would put a 2 there. So this would have to continue going upwards. This would have to be an 8. If this is 2. This could go downwards. If this goes 2, this could be 1. That could be 2, and that would be 4. If this is 2, 4, it can't go up. 2, 4, 8. 4 repeats the 4 in the box. So, okay, so if this is 4. This would have to be... well, this could be 8, couldn't it? Because that could go 4, 2. Bother. That is annoying. And if this is 4, it could go... It can't go 2... So 4, 2, 4, 8 would also be possible. 4, 2, 1, 2 would not be possible. So this could be 8, this could be 4, this could be 2, this could be 1. Good lord, that's weird. I'm even thinking I might have made a mistake there, because that pattern does not look like it's got any symmetry about it at all. But I guess we've still got the 2, 4 in the middle of the 3 dots there, which is what we would expect to have. Okay, so that's that. What do we do next? Answers on a postcard, please, because I'm not sure. Oh, we've got 3, 6 here, look, in the row, and 3, 6 here in the column. My phone's buzzing at me. That means, oh, that is good, yeah. So now we've got 3 6s ruled out of those squares. So we can't put 3 or 6 into this square. I could put a 3 or a 6 into this square, but if I did, it wouldn't matter, because one of these two squares still has to be the other digit, the other 3 or 6. And if we know one of these two squares is a 3 or a 6, the other one must be as well. Oh, this is cool. So now we've got 3 6s here. We do exactly the same logic on those 3 squares. One of these two squares has got to be a 3 or a 6, so they both do. Same thing here. This is beautiful, actually. Look, these 3 6s, this square, force one of those two squares to be a 3 or a 6. Same thing here. These 3 6s align now. So where do we put the 3 and the 6 in row 1 of the grid? It can't be in these 3 squares, can't be in those 3 squares. So we can put one of them here, but the other one would have to be there, so we get another 3 6. And the 3 6 is now aligning in the columns. Good grief. And here's our first use of the negative constraint as well, because we need to put a 3 and a 6 into column 6. We know that none of those squares is 3 or 6. We've got 1 here, so we know the other 3 or 6 cell is either this one or this one. Well, if it was this one, we would need to have black dots connecting these two squares. Now, the absence of a black dot is good enough to know that the 3 6 must move downwards. That gives us a 3 6 pair now in row 9. That must be important, it sort of feels like, this 3 6 pattern round the grid. Oh, I tell you why it's important. Here we've got a 2 4 next to a 3 6. So this square can never be 3, because if it is, it's always next to a 2 or a 4, and there would need to be a white dot here, and there isn't one. So that square is a 6. That means this square can't be a 2 or a 4 now. And we know that this square and this square are the same, so this square is a 1 or an 8. This square also can't be a 2 or a 4. So 1 8. So these two squares are now a 2 4 pair. 1 2 4 2 1 is one option. 8 4 2 4 8 is the other option. Oh, and here's some beautiful logic. Look at this square. This square is massive. It can be a 1 or an 8. But if this square is a 1, the puzzle is broken. See if you can see why. It's really cool. if this is a 1, that would mean that we've got to put the 8 in this box in amongst these numbers, the 5, the 7 and the 9 up here. That's not going to work because I can't disconnect the 8 from the 7 and the 9. It wouldn't matter where I put the 8. Let's try and put it there. I now mustn't have a 7 or a 9 in either of these two squares. Well, I can try and put a 9 in one of those squares, for example, this one up here, that's okay, but now the 7 has to be connected to the 8 and it needs a white dot, and there is no white dot. So that means this square down here cannot be a 1. I have to hide the 8 away. And that means this is a 4, this is a 2, this is a 4, and this is an 8. This square is not an 8 now. And this square can't be a 5, that square can't be a 5, so there's a 5 up here. So now there's a 5 in one of these two squares. And there's 8s in one of these two squares. But we can do this trick again using the 8s, can't we? And the fact that we need to, we cannot have an 8 next to a 7 or a 9. So if this square this doesn't work. If I try and make this square an 8, this square would be a 5. And now where do I put the 7 and the 9? I have to put the 7 and the 9 into those two squares where it will connect with the 8. So this square is not an 8. That is not going to work. This is the 8. Therefore these two squares are 2 and 4 in some order. Well, in fact we know the order because of the Kropki. So that's 4 and that's 2. Now there's now look, there's a 2 in one of these two squares. It can't be in this square because it would need a black dot for the 4. So the 2 is there. That means that's a 4. This can't be a 5 because it would be next to a 4. That's a 5. Where do we put the 7 and the 9 in this box now? We can't have them connected to the 8. The 7 and the 9 are forced into those two squares. This is ridiculous. That square therefore is a 1. Now there's a 1 in one of those two squares, look. The 1 can't connect to the 2 in this box, so the 1s go into those two. Neither of these two squares can be a 1 anymore, can it? Because if it is, it can't connect to the 4. So, no, hang on. I was about to say I've got to hide the 8 away, but the 8 would be quite hidden there. But look, we can still do some logic down here. Because these two squares can't be the same number. If I make these two squares both equal 6, these two squares would both equal 3, and vice versa. If I make these both 3, both of those are going to be 6. So these two squares are different. So this square connects to a 3 and a 6. I just don't know the order. But if that's the case, it can't be a 2, ever. That has to be an 8. That's a 2. This square can't be a 2 because it's next to a 4. And we've got 4s and 8s here now. So, in fact, look, we've got a black dot here that can't contain a 2. So if it can't contain a 2, it can't contain a 1. So it does contain a 4 and an 8, which makes sense given this 4, 8 here. And now what? What do we do now? Oh, that square can't be a 7 because it's next to a 6. These 3 squares have got to be 1, 5, 7 and 9. And there's some restrictions there from the 4, for example. That can't be a 5, that can't be a 1. 6. This puzzle is crazy clever. It's crazy clever. But now I'm a bit stuck. Ah, this square's a 2, so it can't be next to a 3. So that's a 6, that's a 3, that's a 6, and that's a 3. Now, does that help us with anything? Not as much as I thought it would, actually. If we look along here, we need to place 1, 7 and 9 in the row. So this square's got to be a 7 or a 9 because it can't be a 1 because of the 2 that's here and the 1's pencil marked. This square can only be 1 or 8 now, so how can this have so many options? I don't think it does. If this is a 1, this would be 2, this would be 4. That's fine. So this square could be a 4. If this is an 8, this has to be a 4, this has to be a 2. So this square cannot be a 1 or an 8 anymore because we eliminated the 2 and the 4 from this square. So this is a 2-4 pair. And this is a 2-4 pair, so this is a 2-4 pair. And what's more, I guess, if this is 8-4-2, this would have to be 4 or 1. And if this is 1, 2, 4, this would have to be 8 or 2. That can't be 2 because of that 2 there. The 8 is now shifted over to this side, look. Now that's useful because now these 8s lock an 8 into one of these 2 squares. Now I have a strong suspicion this can't be an 8 because of the 7-9 problem. It can't be an 8. That's brilliant. Look, if this square's an 8, where do we hide the 7 and the 9 in this box? We can't. We can put one of them there, but the other one will definitely be in one of those 2 squares. It'll connect to that. It would need a white dot. So this is the 8. Good grief. So this is a 4 now. Oh, I'm going mad. This is a 4. This is a 2. So this square here must be a 1 or a 4. That can't be an 8 anymore. Now where does the 2 go in this box? It can't go next to the 4 because it would need a black dot. Can't go under another 2, so that's a 2. That can't be a 2 because it's next to the 1. The 2's now a line in rows 1 and rows 2, look. Where are we going to put the 2 in row 3? It can't go in those squares. It can't go in those squares. It must be here. So that gives us a 4 as well. That 4 sees the 4 and the 8 over on the right hand side. That sees that 8 there. Now there's an 8 in one of these 2 squares. Oh, but actually 8's down here, resolve it. We've got 8's there, that's an 8. This 8 rules a 7 and a 9 out from that square, so that's got to be a 5. This puzzle is absurdly clever. Oh, now look, this 5. Where do we put a 5 in this box? Can't go here, can't go next to a 4, can't go next to a 6. It's got to hide away there. So now we need 1, 7 and 9 into these squares. This one can't be a 7 or a 9 because it's next to an 8. This one can't be a 7 because it's next to a 6. Wow. Wow. Now, again, the 9 is restricted now in this box because it can't be next to the 8. Can't be in those squares. So it must be in one of those two positions. That is going to help because it's pointing at this square. That is a 7 now. Which means this is a 7, this is a 9, this is a 7. The 1 here tells us the 1 and the 9 are in this order. This square down here now has to be a 7. Hopefully we can resolve these two as well because we need 5 and 9. And then the 8 can't be next to the 9, so that's 5 and 9 has got to be in that order. That's no longer possible to be a 5. So the 5 sits in one of those two squares. And therefore it must be hidden away in the bottom corner there, look. And 5 then is up here because of this 5, which forms a 2-5 pair. And if we look carefully at column 2, we've still got to place 2s and 9s. And look, this 1 tells us this can't be the 2. So that's a 9. Oh, hang on, not 2s and 9s. I mean, the 9 is going to have to go... No, actually, I almost made a mistake there. My scanning's up the spout. 7s and 9s. This still can't... No, I'm going to have to pause there. That's not going to work, is it? 7s and 9s. Nearly made a boo-boo. Never mind. Oh, we can resolve it. Look, there's got to be a 9 in one of those squares. So that's a 7. That's the 9. 9 can't be in those positions. These squares have got to be 1, 4 and 9. You can see the 1, 4 here. 4 there, 1 there because of this 4. 1 sits in one of these two squares. This 7 resolves the order of the 3 and the 6. That fixes this over this side. This 9 now forces the 9 down here, which gives us a 1 as well. That gives us a 1 here. Let's get rid of the 9 there. You can see we need 2, 5 and 7. Well, that square can't be a 5 and it can't be a 2. It can't be a 5 because it's next to a 4. So that's a 7. These two squares have got to be 2 and 5. And ordinarily we'd go, broken puzzle, but not here because this 3 and this 6 tell us something about the ordering. That's got to be a 2, that's got to be a 5, that's a 5 and that's a 2 in order to avoid putting consecutive digits into the same cells. These two squares are 5 and 9 now. You can see the 6 is going to help us there. That must be a 7. That must be a 5. That must be a 1 therefore, just by normal Sudoku. That's the 9. I'm sure we can resolve this stuff down here now. You can see we can place a 1 into this square, which gives us a 4 here. These two squares, that's got to be a 1. That's got to be a 7, I think. And again now we're just going to have to... This 4 is going to resolve everything because it can't be next to a 3. How clever is this puzzle? It's ridiculous. 3, 6, 3, 6, check, done. Wow. Wow, Rishi, hats off, my friend. That is incredibly clever. So that's what you get if you try and do a puzzle by the wizard. I hope you enjoyed it. Do let me know in the comments. I'm not sure how efficient my solve was there, but I think there was some lovely logic through that puzzle. I just wish I'd found it a bit more fluently. Let me know how you got on, and we'll be back later with another edition of Cracking the Cryptic.